Welcome to our E3 event. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about hay, pasture management, as well as transitioning your horses off of pasture into the more inclement weather situations of having hay more readily available for them, as well as in the springtime when we transition back out to pasture. So behind me you can see we have some nice hay bales. You can see some differences. This bale right here, greener, versus this bale up here and up here have more of a yellowish tint to them. This hay right here is going to probably test a little bit better. The horses are probably going to like it a little bit better. It has more of that grassy look to it as well as smell to it. So when you're evaluating hay, what are some things we should be looking for, especially if you're purchasing hay? So we should be looking at the leaf to stem ratio. We should have a higher leaf to stem ratio just because the nutrition is mainly in that leaf. It is not in the stem. The stem is providing the fiber for us. The nutrition that we're getting out, we're getting protein, we're getting the vitamins, we're getting some minerals, and that is what the horse is going to be needing. So if you look at the ones up here that have more of the yellowish tint to them, the green one is going to be more palatable than the yellowish tinted hays. And as you can see, these are different cuttings, obviously, because we have several that are the green ones and we have several that are the more yellowish ones. So that in turn, we're going to have to be feeding our horses a little bit differently. As mentioned earlier, Mike and June do a fantastic job of weighing out their hay, knowing exactly what the horses are going to be getting. And through hay testing and hay sampling, as we've demonstrated, is really going to dial into that horse's nutrition so they are getting exactly what they need. So in the spring, we have these lush green pastures that you see on the pictures that we're showing you. And then let's fast forward to the fall. We are now in November. This is what our pastures look like presently. And we need to transition those horses. Those horses are going from those lush pastures that we had in the spring that were so nutritious to them, and then they've slowly tapered off to what we see today. So we are going to be giving them a lot more hay. And in order to accomplish this, we need to have the hay sampled, hay tested, as we have going to be showing you shortly as to how to do that.
When we're talking about whether or not our hay is working, why are our horses thin, why are they heavy, we don't always know. I can say, hey, you know what? Oh, this looks great. Oh yeah, there's some great grass in there. Wow, that's good. You know, looks great, should be fine. But if my horse's body condition score is telling me otherwise, then we need to take a look at what we need to do to find out what's going on. The only way that we can do that with Forage is by testing it. Sarah's going to demonstrate for us how we need to test hay. We get a lot of questions about, hey, can I get a test on my hay, which is great. And so we get this number and they sample it here. But because we have variability, because the hay is grown in large fields, we want to sample many bales. And we want to go ahead and use something like our hay probe, which is going to be able to drill into this bale and sample throughout it, rather than just grabbing what might have been the last flake of the bale sitting next to us. So Sarah's going to go ahead and drill into this. Pretty simple situation. You may ask then, well, how do I get one of those? Well, no one needs to just go out and everybody needs to buy a hay probe. That's what your team at Country Visions can do. That's a service that they offer to come out and sample your hay. So what we're able to do then is get a nice sample that the labs are going to be able to test of small portions of the hay. So rather than the handful I showed you earlier, this is going to be nice small samples. We're going to be able to drill multiple bales, and we're going to get a very nice representative sample for us to test and really dial into what is going on with your forage and why it may or may not be working. A lot of times going into fall, we start to see some differences in that forage growth. And sometimes it's just as dangerous as the early spring super lush pastures on our horses' digestive system. So We commonly watch every spring that we are careful not to turn horses out without acclimating them to a lush pasture, doing small amounts of time, maybe sometimes for weeks at a time. And as we go through the summer and that pasture starts to diminish, we often think that the nutrient level has also diminished. So we're looking at today, we've had obviously cold. It's frozen. We're looking at maybe some 50-degree weather next week. So that plant growth is obviously not growing at night. It's not growing, but it still maybe has some daylight hours and some warmth that it might do something during the daytime hours. So we also need to be cautious of how much those horses are getting of that. Our horses with metabolic disorders and have some troubles with starch and sugar intake, we need to be cautious of that. We're in Wisconsin. These grasses are cool season grasses. So those grasses don't grow in the evening, so it will start to build up sugars again when it starts to regrowth then during the day. So if we have a horse that's struggling, maybe we have a horse that's been laminitic or had problems with colic in the past, this time of year is also something to be extremely cautious of. For those horses that are struggling a lot, I would say they probably need to be on a dry lot condition, and we need to be transitioning in that September timeframe, getting them on dry forage to avoid any upsets in that digestive system. So I'm joined here today with Ernie. Ernie would like to show you his stall and would like for me to talk to you a little bit about feeding hay and providing clear water for him, right, Ernie? Absolutely. So we talk a little bit about transitioning hay in the fall and providing that for them. And then when we get into winter, how much hay do we feed? A horse can eat no less than 1% of its body weight in hay per day. We need to maintain that so they continue to eat and that digestive system is working well. So we talked earlier in our other segment about body condition score. That's really telling us if we're feeding the right amount of hay, if we're getting enough in there. So Ernie likes to eat hay, and Ernie does pretty well maintaining body condition. So if you have a horse like that at home, how do we provide hay, keep that digestive system working well and happy, and providing a little bit less hay? So we talk a lot about they need forage, which they do, and it helps that digestive system stay calm and happy. But when we have one that's in easy body condition scores, how do we minimize that hay yet keep their hay available? You are really helping today. So if we can back Ernie up a little bit, we can take a look at the slow feed, the nibble nut behind him. That is a great way to limit the amount of hay that we're feeding per day. So he is able to eat small amounts, keep him busy, and it helps to alleviate some of the waste in some of that times when that hay is provided on the floor, they decide to dig it in the middle, it becomes one with the shavings, and we've all seen that happen. So other quick tips on feeding hay, those nibble nuts are low. And that is the way they should be. We need to be cautious of horses that are shod, that they're not going to get hurt in a hay nut or a hay bag, but a horse is designed to eat when their head is down. And our older horses, for swallowing mechanisms, we need to make sure that they're able to swallow correctly. So Ernie also did a great job of showing us that he needs water to eat hay. Water intake drives forage and feed intake. If your horse does not have plentiful, clear water that you would not mind scooping up and drinking yourself, you're going to struggle with hay consumption. So they have nice automatic waterers here, cleaned regularly, and that water is something that if it was a hot day, which it's not, I wouldn't be afraid to go ahead and take a sip of it. But these are some good examples of different ways that you can manage that hay intake. Even as you're transitioning to hay off of pasture, the slow feed nuts can help allow them to eat small amounts and keep them busy through that change.